Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
And we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 41, How to Have Fun and Create Serious Play at Work. And we're recording this on January 25th, 2021. Each week, we cover and discuss the productivity news and technology news headlines of the week. And to do that, we usually invite some folks, some productivity and organization experts onto the show in order to do that. And today, we have Art Gelwicks. Art Gelwicks is a productivity and collaboration consultant, blogger at theideapump.com, and he's also the host of Being Productive podcast, as well as he joins us each week on Productivity Cast, the weekly show about all things personal productivity. And so with that, welcome to Anything But Idle, Art.
Hey, guys.
How's it going?
I don't know if I take it personally or not that you invited me to the show that's all about fun and foolishness in the workplace, because, yeah, that's kind of my thing. But, okay.
I think we've talked about this before on Productivity Cast, but I thought what we would do is bring this topic to Anything But Idle because it's one of those topics that I think is often misunderstood and maligned by corporate in this perspective that somehow having fun is antithetical to productivity. But what I want to posit here is that there have been several studies now that have shown this. Most recently, I came across a study that was called It Pays to Play, which was by Bright HR, a software company, and based out of the UK. And what they noticed is that in essence, when we looked at surveys of employees from across the UK, those who were given the opportunity to have fun, in essence, basically have serious fun that created productivity at work, it helped to reduce absence, it increased productivity, and it actually overall reduced the stress of the employees in the organization. And this included massage days to having pets at the office, pet companions, and all kinds of other kind of progressive programs to be able to bring people more, I don't know if you want to call it levity at work. And in another study, the University of Warwick measured happiness, quote unquote happiness, I don't like that word, on employee productivity and found a 12% spike in productivity among those workers and a 10% drop among the unhappy ones. And so clearly there is evidence out there now, mounting evidence that shows that when we create fun at work, we're actually capable of increasing productivity. And I'm curious from you, why do you think it is that we have this notion still out in the market that somehow fun equates to a lack of productivity or that people are goofing off when they should be working?
Fun and frivolity is one of those things that, if I want to dig into it quick and fast, it goes against that classic Quaker work ethic. If you're playing, you're not working. You're not cranking out the widgets you need to. You're not ticking the boxes that you need to. And it's unfortunate because on the flip side, you'll always have the mantra that, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, which I disagree with that, but I still think the concept is sound. If there's personal pleasure in what you're doing, the inertia and the friction of doing those things is much lower. It's much easier to feel like you are able to go ahead and continue to work and execute. Again, though, the challenge is it becomes part of a measurement. And then the reaction to increasing productivity by increasing people's happiness, I mean, if I could wrap this whole thing in air quotes, I would. When we look at it around that increase of happiness, we then get into this whole forced fun mindset of, oh, we're going to have pizza day. No, fun and frivolity and enjoyment in the workplace has to be recognized as the fact that it's an aspect of humanity. It's not an aspect of work. I mean, if you want something that's not going to have a good time at times, and just do work, look at the computer sitting in front of you, because that's what it was built to do, is just do things. Our greatest benefits come from those opportunities to not only interact, but disengage, disconnect, revitalize, and remotivate into the work that we're doing. And a lot of times that takes a complete wipe of the slate. I don't know how many times that I've had just complete brainstorms because I've stopped what I've done and taken a tennis ball and gone and bounced it against the wall for a while. It's just that mental reset that comes. And it's unfortunate because it becomes corporatized. We get this mindset of you have to have, we're going to gamify this, or we're going to, get you to have a good time. Well, we all know how painful that is. Matter of fact, that's less fun than not having any fun at all. So I think it's extremely important, and the greatest way that we can allow it to happen is to do just that. Allow it to happen. Create the environment and encourage it, but don't try to force it to occur.
I think you make a good point in the forcing of that, but also in what is the definition of fun. And that's one of the problems when you try to make this corporate now. The definition of fun, if we will ask a survey of 3 right now, we will get 3 completely different definitions of what that fun means. Okay. Not only that, if you ask me today or ask me in 2 weeks, the activities that I may want to do for fun, depending on how everything is on my life, may change. So that make it really difficult. That said, one of the and understanding that is one of the issues that I saw. Again, I came from a sales background, and salespeople have a lot of fun. That's reality. Okay, we play hard, but we also have a lot of fun. So it is important to understand that. And I remember at the beginning of my career having fights between me as a salesperson or me on the sales department and other departments who didn't understand why some of the stuff were fun. I will never forget that accounting guy on my first traveling sales job. Every time I come back, really mad about my bills and why the company need to pay for you to eat with the client. I say, talk to the boss. But for him, that was something really fun that I did that he could not understand or comprehend or anything why I had that to have that fun in my job, what he needed to crunch numbers.
Well, yeah,
Go ahead. I was going to say it's value, and I think that really demonstrates it right there. We consider fun to have no value within a work environment. Being productive generates work products, which ultimately result in the generation of revenue, conceptually. Fun doesn't do that unless your business is fun. I mean, if you're a content creator who's producing entertaining content, or I don't know, you run an axe throwing place, whatever.
You make frisbees.
Yeah, there you go. That's your business, your work to do it. But your fun isn't tied to that. We have to recognize, and it goes broader than just fun. And I go back to the humanity aspects of work anymore, especially now, especially with what we're in now, how critical it is to recognize that we can take this gray matter up here and just turn it into jello if we're not careful. We have to be able to give ourselves the opportunity to be human, not to be a machine just cranking out the work products that have been dictated for us. And that's where that value has to be not only shared, but accepted, which I think is the biggest part. That acceptance is the hard one.
I wanted to take a step back to what you were talking about earlier, Art, and underscore that, as I want to always say, habits are to individuals as culture is to organizations. And setting the stage, setting the environment for having fun is actually really much more important than you trying to force particular fun programs on people. And so in order to create that kind of environment, you really do need to work on it on a cultural level. And that may mean including putting infrastructure in place that you might seem to think to be frivolous. For example, putting games in the break room, or in a virtual world, adding games into a virtual environment like your Slack or otherwise. The goal for you is to be able to create opportunities for people to socialize in ways that they otherwise wouldn't when it comes to work. Remember that when we are using faculties that are misaligned with our work faculties, or the faculties we use every day for work, we're actually creating new connections mentally, brain-wise. And that also means we're creating new connections socially. And those different patterns excite a whole bunch of other ideas. And those ideas can then be applied in a work environment. Because, think about it from this perspective. When any animal is young, including humans, we use play as a mechanism for learning. And by recognizing patterns that work and don't work, we then become better at various skills, whether that be running, walking, and otherwise. There's a reason why we play. And by turning that off in the work environment, we're actually we're stifling the ability for employees to grow in those capacities. And so I just really want to impress upon everybody, especially those of you who have to kind of educate your upper management on the importance of this. Remember to start small and take these small rewards systems and then build on top of them. So, it may be something as simple as being able to say, hey, listen, let's have a game night for the team. We all jump into a game of Among Us. Those of you who know that reference, I think Augusto, somebody used it as a new tool of the week in past weeks. You can check a past episode for that. And then use that as a mechanism to say, listen, look how fun that was for our staff, and look at the cohesion that was built upon it, and grow from there. Don't try and invest in a whole new, Google-esque, slides down the middle of the office building. You really need to start with something very, very small, show the quick wins there, and then build upon those programs. But that means you are slowly but surely changing culture. You're not changing individuals. You're changing culture.
And there's two parts to that. If I think back to the old .com days, I remember when the .coms were first starting up, and the big talk was, "Ooh, they've got foosball in the break room. They've got a basketball hoop in the break room," and that's what made them new and edgy. No, what made them new and edgy is they allowed people to use that foosball table and that basketball hoop. They created an environment that it was okay to not be heads down on the grindstone all day long. But that's, as we look so many years past that, we still have that mindset of, are you getting your work done? We individually, we as leaders, we as coaches have to lead by example with that, and have fun, not be as formal, not be as, as, I hate to say it, but tight-assed about some of this stuff, and just allow people to be the way they are. I'm a huge, now I come partially from a training and education background, but also from the ideation fields. And in both of those cases, a relaxed mindset is a more powerful mindset. Tension creates difficulty, and it creates drag. So being able to get people to relax was always a big thing. So I would do sessions, lunch and learns, which is the phrase my wife thinks is hysterical, because she just learned that phrase about 6 months ago, and she goes, "That sounds terrible." And I'm like, yes, it is. But I used to take Legos. I had a bag of Legos, and I would dump them on the table before the meeting, and we'd start, and the Legos were just laying there. And I could guarantee that unless I sat down and started playing with the Legos during the meeting, nobody else was going to pick them up. But once I started playing with it, somebody else would reach over and take a couple and start snapping them together. And then at some point during the meeting, I took whatever I made, and I went over and I stuck it on top of whatever they made. And they're like, "Well, that's not what I built." I'm like, "Well, that's what we built." And then move on from there. But that's the kind of thing. It's a difference in mindset and culture, and we have to be willing to encourage that and get away from, did I have 8 hours of productive time? It's really, I've been thinking about it a lot the past couple of weeks, and I think the term productive is done. Really, my focus is on effectiveness now. It's going to be, is what we're doing effective to whatever we want to be? And fun is an effective tool to get through roadblocks and things like that.
Well, we can debate that topic someday soon.
Oh, I'd love to take that one on.
That'll probably have to be for Productivity Cast. But
Okay.
With that, any final thoughts, quick tips that people can walk away with regarding really how to have fun and create serious play at work, other than what we've talked about so far?
I'm going to mention I consult coach for organization that one of the cool things that had was that they had a person who could give you a quick massage on your desk once a week. They do once a month. The company put a keg of beer, and then people bring appetizers, and basically they have this area where everybody was welcome to come and have a after hour time together or whatever. But it was part of the plan, and it was not like, oh, the keg was at 6 p.m. after work. No, it was designed so they get earlier technically on Friday, so they could go to spend some of that working hours into that. So, and as that worked that was a more large organization, it also worked for a smaller organization. So it is important to understand that play will bring a lot more creativity to your team. So embrace it. I'm a color guy, so I have always have colors or markers with colors on my desk. Why? Because there are moments that even if I need to think for work, having that ability to play with colors really can change everything.
Yeah, I agree completely. When you think about ways to get this started with people, like I said, give yourself permission, give them permission, and Ray's absolutely right. Take little steps. I was involved in a team recently that just in our conversations, we discovered we all like tea. So we started having tea times, and we just say, and we'd all share which teas we liked and what we were having that time. And it was 5, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15. People could hang out and chat. But that team became much more effective because they trusted each other. And that's one of the things that fun, unfortunately being the loaded term that it is, helps build, is trust in each other. That if I'm not my normal polished, folded up business self, if I'm going to be a little bit human, you're not going to slap me for it.
Yeah, and also recognize that I come from that personal space where, as an executive for most of my adult life, I have always been very guarded about showing myself, quote unquote, having fun in front of my staff, in front of colleagues. I just never really showed that part of myself. And after I left my last company, I decided to actually kind of like, let things be a little bit more organic about me, and that has been an education in a number of different things. And it does require work when you are so used to being in a very corporate or stodgy environment where everyone goes to work in suit and tie, and the culture is that you don't talk about personal life inside the hallowed halls of your office, and those kinds of things that I was just used to, and quite honestly I was very comfortable with doing. And so I've had to work very hard to kind of be more human as it relates to people, because all I want is I'm efficiency and effectiveness. I'm all about let's get things done. And what I recognized over time is that if I'm too dogged about that with people, then they're actually not as productive. And so I need to draw back and say, oh, how are your kids? And what's your dog's name? And things of that nature that are not necessarily about work, but lean so much into how work gets done. And as soon as I recognized that component, I really found myself really hitting stride in that perspective. So thank you, gentlemen, for this conversation. This has been a lot of fun. And with that, we're going to switch into our next phase of the show, which is our headlines, our stories of the week. And so let's get through and into our stories of the week. Augusto, what is our first story this week?
Well, our first story this week is finally Google finish all the acquisition of Fitbit. So Fitbit is now officially part of the Google world, and it's been something coming, and I'm particularly excited about it because I think I love the smart watch technology. I think there is so much potential that it still have, and Google coming and join there, I hope it's going to really step up the game for many people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here for Google Fit to be able to access this data over time and to be able to use that. So if I'm a Google Fit user and I'm also a Fitbit user, being able to get that data to work together and be understood together, I think is going to be really profoundly useful. Right now, Google Fit can take sleep data from many different applications, and it can take all kinds of other health data. And now to be able to use the Fitbit line of products in line with that, I think is going to be very, very useful because a healthy body is a productive body. And so we cannot decouple the biology of productivity from the principles, methods, and tools and skills of productivity. So I'm excited to see this happen. I know that there are regulators out there who are obviously concerned and should be continuing to push forward. But I'm excited to see Fitbit connected with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why Google went and got them, I mean, honestly.
Data.
Because sure as heck, Wear OS isn't stepping up and doing it. So.
Wear OS isn't dead, by the way. I know that a lot of people keep saying that, but it has not obviously taken off and gotten as much traction as the Apple Watch ecosystem and the whole concept of Watch OS. But Wear OS is going to beat out Watch OS for the mere fact that it is it's open. Anyone can build upon Watch OS, and that's always the innate difference between Android and iOS. Is that?
I disagree with you there.
No, think about this, Art. Go back 10 years ago, and everybody said, "Oh my goodness, here goes the iPhone, this brilliant new device. It's taking over the market. It will be the leader." And all that time, I said, who's going to win? It's going to be Android. Why? Because Android is an open platform. It allows everybody to have access to it, from the lowest level product all the way up to the highest end products. Where are we today? Android is the dominant platform on the planet. And we're going to see the same thing happen with Watch OS as wearables become more and more capable and on more devices. We will see the proliferation of, at least in the watch wearable world, the Wear OS take over. And the only probable maybe risk there is that there are others, like KaiOS and others that can potentially be morphed into the watch format. And we have some minor OS players who are trying to take over the wearables watch space, and potentially they may take over if they stay open and are capable of proliferating. Your argument
I'll
against
tell
that.
you, if Wear OS has an EKG meter, it's because it needs to know if it has a pulse. Because, I mean, I'm a Samsung guy. I don't make any bones about it. And Samsung runs Tizen. They don't run Wear OS. And if you've worn both, and I got a Wear OS watch in my drawer back there, and there's a reason why it's back in the drawer. It's sitting next to my Remarkable 2. No, I didn't say that. But it is a tool. It is a platform. Wear OS is the mobile version of Google Messaging. Can we just go with that? They have no idea what they want to do with it. They have no focus. They went and bought Fitbit to try and provide the fitness connection, which could save the platform, honestly. But they really, really need to give it a kick in the pants, because they've got so many. They've never truly supported the hardware properly. The battery life has always been anemic at best. And until they really have that definitive thing, this is one of those things that I hate to say Apple has the advantage in, because they have the locked closed ecosystem and they basically have one type of watch. So it's either going to work or it's not. everybody else, I mean, if you have Fossils, if you have, Coors watches, I mean, all over the place. Yeah, everybody's got them, but nobody's particularly successful at them. And this is not one of those platforms, I think, that wins by attrition. I think something has to differentiate for it to really take control.
Well, and I'm going to take Art's side in this one. Ray's side in this one. And sorry, Art, but I'm going to use you as an example of this. When we begin recording a productivity cast, okay, the difference between having an iOS versus having an Android was significant, okay, and that difference came to a more equivalent devices now, okay, even to the point that when that discussions, first episodes, we had those discussions that the parity on features and certain things were really significant, as it is with the watchOS right now. The thing is, the watchOS is still it's not a masses product yet. Okay, it is fancy. It's for certain people who are, but it's not yet break into any category yet where people will consider, okay, I need now to get one. It's getting there. Okay, I was reading, they're talking about measuring sugar, the AKG, measuring blood pressure. Okay, so it's getting, since it could not get from the exercise side, it's trying to get to the medical part. Fantastic. But as soon as those things start coming common, then I agree that it may not get the high end. You need to go to the Google, but most people will start getting some of these products into, and because of the volume and the cost, Google will win the battle. And Apple don't want to win that battle at all.
No, well, I mean, they have that closed ecosystem, and it's just one more way to tie people in, for Apple at least, within their device scheme. But I do have to agree with you, Ray. I think Wear OS will probably go away. There will probably become a new name at some point, because I think Google is at some point going to recognize the fact that the most important thing about their wearable devices is the person wearing them. It has little to do with the original concepts when we saw these come out of this is like a mini phone on my watch and I can do this. And I have yet to actually watch somebody take a call on their watch. I know it's possible.
You need to come to my house.
Masked
up.
But I'm sorry. There's just
you're going to need an N95.
Actually, I'm going to say, with the combination of the AirPods and the 3G watch, okay, you can go take these two things, walk around, get the calls in the headphones or in the AirPods, okay, and you don't need the watch for anything. I'm actually continue complaining about the fact that Apple make me buy an iPhone when I could really, if they allow me to have an independent Apple Watch and something to set up my iPad and my watch without having a phone, I could survive without the phone these days.
I know. It just seems like such an edge case.
Yeah, no, but I will say that I've had I've had a fair share of circumstances where the watch has been so useful in so many regards. But I think the best case scenario for at least the premium market that would want a watch on the Android side, I'm never going to get an Apple Watch. I mean, it's just not going to be something that I'll do the iPad. I will get Mac Minis, I will get MacBooks and MacBook Pros. I'm happy there, but I will never go to the tied to the Apple ecosystem in terms of my phone or a wearable. I just don't trust Apple that way. So the goal for me is to be able to utilize Wear OS in that particular regard, which is that there have been times when I've been able to take a phone call. I'm washing dishes, I'm cleaning, I'm doing other things, and I can take that phone call directly on my watch, and the audio is competent enough that my mother doesn't care about the audio quality of my phone call. As long as she can understand me, we can have that kind of phone conversation. And now I can get things done hands-free, and it didn't require putting on headphones. It didn't require having the phone within arm's reach, and it is tied to the phone. The second is that I have been locked out of my house several times now, and and being able to have the watch open up my garage door so that I can unlock get myself back in has been, let's just say, beyond measurable in
And
terms of value.
I can see that. I mean, I admit I use the messaging capability on my watch quite a bit because I can respond to text messages that way and react to them when I'm out in the shop or something like that. But again, these are such edge cases. I mean, this is not a mass adoption. You're right, Augusto. This is not at a mass adoption level yet on either platform, I don't think.
And I don't think it ever will be in terms of mass adoption, in terms of watch wearers. I think those people who are interested in watch wearing will have them, and they will be always a minority because your phone is your watch. And so that's very difficult to have someone bleed over into wearing a watch when they otherwise didn't. And that's why I think that what Augusto's talking about in terms of using it for health and fitness as well as medical type things, where these devices are becoming that much more sophisticated. One of the big things at CES this year was there were multiple ECG, EKG, mobile ones that tied to your phone. The more that becomes caked into something like a watch, it becomes more useful for a population that can afford it, and also a population that will want that kind of data. And so I think that's really key here. I know we've gone a little bit off the rails here. Art, go for it, and then let's move
just
on.
One quick thing. The one product I've always wanted them to bring out is the digital pocket watch. I think it's the right size form factor. I think it's the right design. You've got a bigger thing, bigger battery. You could put LTE in it. You could do the whole thing and just slip it in that little extra number 5 pocket on your jeans that we never put anything in anymore. It's got a pocket already built into there. So I want that out there, people.
And there's a whole fashion market for that as well. I'm sure you could skin them different ways. You could have different silicone sleeves. Lots of good stuff there. I'm with you, Art. All right, on with the next story this week, Augusto.
So our next story of this week, keeping this discussion, is going to be on Peloton, and Peloton users can now have their own custom workout routines. So Peloton you have this massive library of videos, and they have now extended to yoga and other things. So you can now, instead of need to search, you can go and plan what is that video that you want, that stack those classes and those videos, and have them all run together using the bike and everything else.
Well, I just heard that the new president of the United States has a special Peloton that has been put into the White House so that he's able to work out securely. And so, very interesting to see Peloton.
Have you seen the design of it?
I have not.
It has 4 little treadmills around it for the Secret Service guys to run with him. So,
but
oh gosh.
I don't know about that, but this is not the first time actually Peloton did that. Peloton did that also to Miss Obama, and Michelle Obama had also a Peloton bike on the White House. I don't know if the secrecy and conditions are different than what Michelle Obama had with Joe Biden. I don't know, but she had one when she was on the White House.
What I have found interesting about Peloton, because they've always had, the high-end bikes and multi-$1,000 gear and setups. So the fact that they released their training classes through a subscription base where you could sign up through a tablet, and then use whatever bike you have at home. And it doesn't have all the same features, but that's the next logical step with that type of thing, because of the environment we're in, and we have to be active, even though I spend the majority of my time in my chair. Those types of services are just going to continue to grow. And, Peloton has the brand recognition. So, good on them for that.
Absolutely. All right. Next up.
Okay. Next up is Pocketcast is up to sale. And we have been discussing a lot about the podcast.
We're having some audio issues, Augusto. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I've lost his audio, but from what I see on the document, Pocketcast being up for sale after 3 years of having been acquired by Public Radio. I hate to say it, I'm not entirely shocked this is happening. When Pocketcast originally announced that they're being acquired by a Public Radio group, and I forget the exact details, but you can Google them easily enough, and saying that they were going to work as part of this greater consortium, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to go anywhere.
No, it's just a reality.
Yeah, it's
Which
not
is a shame because I like the
anybody.
platform. But
Go for it, Augusto.
It's not a surprise for anybody, but hey, it's what it is. I never understood the initial purchase either, but see what happened
Well,
now.
so Pocketcast is an amazing podcasting app. So if you are trying to utilize a great podcast app and really work through podcasts so that you can get more in, it's got all the great functions and functionalities that you need in a podcatcher. So it's not that Pocketcast is bad. It's just that there's not much of a business model behind podcast apps when there's such a proliferation. I mean, there's just a lot of competition in the market, and so I think that's just a reality factor. I think it will land on solid ground in some kind of ecosystem that can support it and that kind of thing. It's just not going to be a moneymaker. It just has to be something that an organization wants to use for purposes of running it, and it has a lot of podcasts. That there are not a lot of people who use Pocket Cast. It's a very widely used tool, so there's a lot of cost associated with something that is not itself income generating, while at the same time something that a lot of people use. And so that's kind of the part to it.
I could see some big podcast network picking it up, using it as their client, which also expands into other podcast platforms. But you're right. I mean, it's like saying that I'm going to make money as the popsicle stick, not as the popsicle. So
right. And hopefully, like with Podbean has their own podcast app that you can install and listen to podcasts within. Maybe one of those podcast hosts would take that as their own and then utilize the tool. There may be some natural connection there that I think would be useful. Moving right along, Augusto, the world's first iPadOS style Linux distro.
This is really exciting for me as a person who believe on the tablet, who love the tablet, seeing this kind of thing, seeing the first, really super rich interface, iPad only style for a Linux distributor. This means for me that the tablet finally are going to go to the next level where we are not going to compare them as underpower and machines that are not capable, that they have been capable, but now it's getting to the point that even people who do those Linux distro understand that they are fully compatible and perfectly capable machines. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, so this
I
is
may
called
need to buy me a tablet.
This is called Jing Os, and it was created, quote, with the goal of improving the functionality and performance of tablets in general. In essence, they wanted to be able to take the iPad OS and create that simple, powerful environment that is known in the tablet ecosystem as it relates to Apple's tablet device. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the fact that here's a full-featured Linux distro just ported into the tablet format. And so this is really interesting. I'm glad you brought it to my attention, and now I have something to look forward to.
Me too.
All right, next up.
Next one is MindNote. That's one of my favorite apps for mind mapping. Talking about fun seems completely on topic, but I love mind maps. I love the ability to do many things with them. And now the Mac version allows to convert that mind map into an outline, and you can sort into the outline or sort into the mind map, and we'll update that. And it is really cool to see MindNote really getting the mind map to the next level, make them a lot more powerful. I remember the days where I lived on MindJet and before they were acquired, and it was there is something to say about a really powerful mind map application.
That's one of the things I always liked about the application FreeMind, is that it had a built-in outline export capability, and that made it so much more useful for me to create mind maps and then share them with non-mind mapping people. So to see something like MindNote also adopting that, I think broadens the horizons of the type of application and can get people to cross that bridge into visually thinking through a mind map model.
Yeah, I don't consider mind maps until they're able to have OPML format. I need to be able to see that file. I need to download it and see it in both an outline view and then to then explode it into the mind map view. I love being able to toggle between the three. I'm a huge FreeMind fan and user, and it's just one of those things. I don't need, a lot of these other tools are just they're aesthetically pleasing, but that also creates a whole host of weight on the application that keeps me from actually just getting the mind mapping done. I want to get the brainstorming, creative thinking, the organization of thoughts out of my head, and I don't like that friction. And some are really doing a great job. Simple Mind, I think, is doing a really great job. I don't have a lot of experience with MindNode, but a lot of mind mapping software are out there and doing really great jobs. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more and more tools adopt this outline features as you talked about.
So our next article, it's an article on make use of, and it's the 7 best Apple Pencil alternatives that you can find for your iPad and your iPhone. So the good on this article are the ones that are really a comparison to the Apple Pencil on the iPad. The bad of these articles are people who are still trying to make the iPhone to be a device. Until you can get precision writing on the iPhone, it's a waste of time. I don't care if it's Android or that big ball that is like your finger. After you play with this, it's never going to happen again.
Yeah, it's got to be an active. It's got to be an active device. Capacitive ones are just not worth the aggravation.
So in this particular case, just so that folks know, the highest rated items here, I didn't understand it. So maybe you can give me some thoughts here. So there were ratings. It was a 10-point rating scale, and there was a premium pick, editor's choice, and best value, as Make Use Of typically does. And the premium pick had a 7.6, whereas we had a 9.4 on the list that didn't even make either of those 3 top choices. So I'm interested to know why the premium, editor's choice, and best value, and I'll just list them for folks who are listening. The Adonit Note M was the premium pick, so that was that one. Editor's choice was the Logitech Crayon, which seems to appeal to me, and I don't know why. And then the best value was the Moco Active Stylus pen, which I had never heard of before, and I'll be curious to check that out a little bit more. Why?
The Adroit has always been popular. For some reason, because when they did the original design of that, if you look at it, it looks like a regular ballpoint pen that has a flying saucer attached to the end of it. It creates a larger capacitive area that you can write with. It still doesn't have active level of response, but it's definitely more accurate than the big rubber ball. The last one you mentioned, and you're going to find if you do an Amazon search on that type, you will find tons of those. And what they are is they are actually powered pens that use a USB rechargeable device and creates an active tip, but it's active with a small a. So instead of it being like the big capacitive rubber ball, it creates the same effect, but it has a small tip. That does not mean it is more accurate, though. That's part of the challenge is when you go to use that on inking applications or something like that, you're still dealing with the same level of resolution that you are with any sort of capacitive tip. So I think your Crayon would probably be even more accurate than this.
It turns out the Crayon doesn't work with my iPad, but that's okay. Yeah,
Augusto's absolutely right. If you compare any of those devices to a true active device, like an Apple Pencil or like an S Pen, there's no going back. I mean, it's literally the difference between using a crayon and a fountain pen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, yeah, sticking to the Apple Pencil. All right.
Yeah, and Adonit was an incredible product. I used them before the Apple Pencil. I used them. I even work with them. I distribute them in Latin America. So they were a really good product, but can't compare with the Active Pencil at all. So
all right, next up.
The next news should make Art smile. For the people who are listening, sorry you're missing the smile, but for the people who are watching us live, Art is smiling now that Samsung has officially, and I'm sure he read about this, saying that they're expanding the S Pen support to much more devices. So
yeah, the whole S21 line, or no, the Ultra is getting the support. They're updating on the S6 and the S7. You're going to see it on more and more Samsung higher end devices. And I have a theory about this because they finally got themselves over the mental issue of where to put the pen. If you think about the notes, for the longest time, you had internal storage on the device. And that's always been the hang up, is that you're chewing up internal real estate to store this pen. If you look at the S21 Ultras, they've got the pen on the outside. It's not optimal, it's not perfect, but it's also no different than what anybody else does when they have an external stylus. The fact that they've mentally crossed that bridge, and now they can start to get people to cross that bridge with them, I think you're going to see this even more and more. And it's about time, not so much from the hardware standpoint, but from the software support standpoint. The more devices we can get out there that have active pen support on the Android side and on the Chrome OS side, the more applications we'll see to support that. And that, to me, there is just a wasteland of applications that are just waiting to be developed in that particular space, but there just hasn't been the hardware desire for it. So I think it's a great thing. I still think we're probably a year to 2 years before we truly see it starting to creep out in the space. But yeah, it's a good thing. That and the fact that S Pens, you don't have to charge them. They're completely unpowered. So, because they're based, for anybody who really cares, I'm going to geek out a little bit. They're based on Wacom ERM or EMR technology. So it's actually sensed by the device. And I can use the same stylus on my phone and on my tablet at the same time. So it's a game-changing approach. It's about time they did it. My only concern is, guys, don't kill the note line just because you're doing this. So
it's been back and forth. I've been hearing different things about it. So we'll see what happens. All right, Augusto, we've got a few more before we hit the break. What's our next story this week?
So our next story is from Lifehack: how to quickly calm your mind and refocus when you are stressed. So this is an article that I should have read daily the last 7 days, as it's been a crazy week, but hey.
Yeah, so this is actually written by Forrest Talley. He is a clinical psychologist and fully well worth reading the article. So when we put out the show notes, I highly recommend that you actually sit down and read this article because it uses some really interesting methods, including the stress inoculation training that the military uses. And so this is some really interesting stuff that you can use in terms of being able to start to reduce your fight, flight, or freeze response as it relates to all kinds of things in your world. And I know that when I read this, I thought, okay, I need to start doing some of this stuff because it can be really useful to me in and amongst all the various stressors in my own life. And that, of course, remember, stress is both categorical and volume based. So bad types of stress are categorical stress, right? Something happens negative in your world, that's a distressor. But also good stress, just normal stresses in life, once they reach a certain volume, then also becomes negative. And so we need to remember that categorical and volume based stress needs to be dealt with. And so this idea of being able to de-stress in every capacity, especially now while we're still in the midst and grips of this global pandemic, we need to have every tool in our toolkit to be able to reduce those kinds of stressors and increase our productivity thereby. And so let's move on along, Augusto, to our next story this week.
Next story is Indiegogo. There is a new phone called the Astroslide, and I don't understand this product because I don't know a lot of people who type on their phone on landscape. I know a lot of people who do it portrait. Okay, I do, but I don't see my phone has, like all of us, the ability to type landscape. I can think on once that I have actually done that, and I have had this phone, larger phone. So why do it that way? That's all the question I'm going to ask.
There were a few phones back in the day that was the layout. They were a landscape clamshell design to make it easy. And I can't remember the manufacturer. Somebody will have to post in the comments because that was a thing that you could do that. I've used
T-Mobile was
those,
big on
and
those.
Yeah, the T-Mobile Sidekick is what comes.
The
It's the
Sidekick is
Motorola,
what
There you go,
the
the
Motorola
Sidekick.
line of phones. The Sidekick.
I-
Yeah.
there's value. I've seen clip-on versions of it. This thing, I don't know about this thing. I mean, it's trying to be a smartphone and a pocket computer with a keyboard. Yeah, okay. This is another solution in search of a problem. That said, the horizontal keyboard, maybe. I don't know.
I have to say, I was a very heavy BlackBerry user back in the day, and the ability to type on screen without looking at the screen is next to impossible on a touchscreen phone. There's always going to be some desire to glance at the phone, and having this kind of tool where you can actually type and not have to look down in order to see the screen, I think can be very useful. Think about being in someday.
I agree, but in portrait mode, never on landscape.
It would be very difficult to slide the whole thing up fully so that you could have that portrait and the keyboard big enough.
It's not a Samsung who flips, then you get the screen, but then the keyboard is portrait. Now you're going to make me look into the device.
What will make or break this thing is weight distribution. And the reason why I say that is because I have a clip for my phone that hooks to an Xbox controller. So I can play Stadia games and Xbox games on my phone. And the weight distribution of that heavy phone on top, even with the monster Xbox controller, it's still top heavy and leans back and introduces fatigue. This, if they don't get the weight distribution absolutely right, will be a bear to work with for an extended period of time. And it's not something you're going to put it on the desk and type like this. I'm sorry, I got little hands, and that's not going to cut it.
No, this is for being in an environment where you are seated and you want to be able to type and keep your gaze up at whatever the content is on screen. I can see people who are attending conferences. I can see people who are in school environments, classroom environments where they want to be able to take notes or play a game while the professor's speaking. This is a potentially really interesting tool. I can also see myself utilizing this in a plane environment where I'm on the road and I want to be able to get work done, but I don't want to have to carry a laptop, and this becomes the best kind of argument for having this kind of thing. I'm currently waiting for my text blade from WayTools. WayTools, get me my text blade. I have been waiting for such a long time, and what it does is it pairs this, of course, by wirelessly to my phone, so that I'm able to type what is supposed to be on a natural kind of full keyboard feel by pops out the two pieces, it clips onto a center piece, and then I can go ahead and start typing. But the idea of having the keyboard just caked right into the phone, I really am all about a physical keyboard. There are just keyboard shortcuts and the ability to be able to execute things on a touchscreen that can't happen really all that easily. I presume you can do keyboard shortcuts on a digital screen, but it's just not as common and therefore not supported in a lot of applications. If we had that keyboard functionality to be able to do it, I mean, I use my external keyboard and I'm capable of executing those shortcuts, and it makes for changing between applications on my phone and doing all those kinds of things that can be really. So this has been funded. It's raised $1.7 million from 2,600 backers, and so clearly the Astroglide 5G transformer is wanted by some group of people.
I agree. I'm talking about the LG Wing, which is split on the screen, but instead of have that second screen, they should have put a keyboard in there, a physical keyboard in there. That will have make it.
Now, I agree with you there. That would have been a better form factor to do that. Now, I was not a BlackBerry guy, but I had the Samsung Blackjack 2, which was the same basic thing, and I could just crank on that thing and not have to look at the keyboard. So you're right. There is a lot of validity to that physical proximity on the keys themselves.
Yeah, I was a Trio guy, and I agree. It was.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of mourned the day, shed a tear for when they got rid of the physical keyboards, but think about all the real estate we picked up and the tries that companies have had to create like a sleeve for the phone or something. None of that's ever worked well. So.
Onward and upward. Next up, Augusto, what's our next story?
Wattpad is being sold to Navarre. And actually, I think Art was on the show where we were talking about color ink, and we were talking about cartoons and comics on the ink with the colors. And it is interesting because part of what Navarre does is exactly that. Is the art, is it's all, all that in the Korean market, but giving that anime and all those things. So Wattpad seems to be a good match for them. It was a 600 million in cash, and I'm excited to see where they are going to take this now too.
Yeah, so Wattpad is a social storytelling platform, and it has a community of people who really utilize it. It has its own awards thing called the Waddies, and it has writing contests, and writers can really come together and help produce materials for readers. And so Wattpad had its own community. It's interesting that Naver, which is as you noted, a South Korean company, decided to buy this. And Naver is kind of, I don't know what the equivalent is here in the United States. It's kind of like Facebook here, or think of kind of like Sina Weibo or Tencent or WeChat, those kinds of large conglomerate technology companies in Asia. Naver is that kind. They also are a web host, so they host a lot of websites. So it's interesting that they purchased this. Is clearly a movement into that market to get more social eyeballs, and so I'm curious to see how this really works out. And so yeah, really cool there. Okay, next up, last story before the break.
The BBC having an article on how the pandemic could redefine our productivity obsession, and we discussed this a year ago, and how there was going to be people who was going to discover the love of working from home, even with coworkers who print on your office in the middle of the live show. Okay. And people who were going to die to go back to their office as soon as possible. But also the people who were going to be able to discover that their life wasn't fulfilling, that they don't want it to that overpack life anymore, and they discover that there are other things. And that's basically what the article discussed. It put an account executive. It reminded me she started 6:30 in the morning, drink a lot of coffee until 10 p.m. That collapse. I remember that life, and also remember exactly what the feeling she is doing now that she's doing all this in a different way. Well, she's questioning, should I come back? And I think that's one of the things that are going to be fun now that we're going to come back as a coach, as a productivity coach, on people understanding and trying to get to the people, to the company, to the places they work, what they want now. Because as many companies are going to start calling the troops in, not every soldier will come with a smile.
Yeah, I think there is a clear reckoning that needs to be had in the corporate world, as well as in the mid-size enterprise and in small businesses, related to what productivity looks like in a dynamic environment. We weren't prepared for this, and now that we've experienced some level of it, once we go back into this off-ramping from everyone having to work remotely except for essential workers and frontline workers, we need to decide what is equitable for people in this regard. How do we create for remote hybrid environments that are capable of being inclusive and dynamic in that sense? So I think there's a lot to be understood. I think that none of us can understand what the future holds. We can't predict that in that sense, but at the same time, I think it's important for us to be having these conversations now. Now is the time to be talking to both staff, direct reports, as well as upper level management to kind of figure out what does post-pandemic work look like, and how do we actually maximize productivity, and does that mean for your unique workforce? Everyone is going to be different. But for your unique workforce, will it mean having 4 days in the office and 3 days, 3-day weekends, or is it going to mean having some kind of hybrid environment where people are capable of doing either? Or are we going all remote? Everybody goes remote, and you're going to work completely remote. For me, we've chosen to go all remote. We're not going back. into the office after this is all done. And that is a purposeful choice, and I think one that will actually be productively positive for my company. But is it going to be the case for yours? I don't know. But it really makes sense for you to start having that conversation now, and don't wait till the next, wall is in front of you for you to hit it. Now is the time for you to be able to kind of slowly but surely prepare all of the infrastructure to ramp up your productivity for the staff and everybody else in the organization, get the technology in place to be in that next phase that we're coming toward. With that, we are going to come back after the break and continue our stories of the week. But in the meantime, we are going to take a quick break and have a word from our sponsor this week, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. We also host social and networking events and fireside expert chats, as well as member discounts for other programs, products, and services. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. We have a special offer going on that ends on January 31st, 2021, that gives you a month of free trial and 50% off the membership rate. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. Get the special offer before January 31st. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. And we have Augusto Pinaud, of course, and our guest, Art Gelwix, joining us today for our show. And before the break, we were discussing the first part of our stories of the week, and now we are getting into our second half of the show and continuing our stories of the week, basically headlines part B, part 2. So Augusto, what is our next headline this week?
The next headline came from Jessica John, how a 55 Christmas gift turbocharged my productivity. And she's talking about the journal and talking about paper and paper planner with additional pages. If you're a lover of paper planner, please, by all means, read the article.
This is a specialized planner. Yeah. It's called the Organized Life Planner, and it's, as she noted, $55 USD, and it's actually really unique. It comes with some interesting kind of organizational components for being able to look at your day, week, month, and it gives some prompts to be able to help you organize throughout the planner. I liked it. It seems high quality. It seems like it would be a very interesting product for somebody who really just needed a change of pace and wanted some other kind of structure for their world. And there's a monthly budget tracker for expenses and other things. Just some really interesting things behind it. Seemingly someone gave some thought to this, and I appreciated the idea. It's not my flavor, but I think it can help people if you're really looking for a new planner of sorts.
No, I completely agree with you. That's the reason it made it into the news. I'm not a paper person. I have a list that says you do not buy paper product because you love them. In the concept, you love the concept, but the execution has been the same since 2001. Okay, but I agree with you. There is a lot of thought put behind this one. So if you are a paper planner person and you like paper and you enjoy those kind of things, check the article. I think you may find something interesting for you.
I just think it's worth getting Augusto to say paper planner person 3 times fast. That's all.
As long as he doesn't make me say it in Spanish. All right, next up we have an HBR article entitled "Productivity is about your systems, not your people." What do you think? So I'll read the summary. Here, I'll read the summary. This will help start the conversation. So the summary says, the pursuit of individual productivity is healthy and worthwhile. However, unless you work independently outside of an organization, the benefits of most tricks will be limited. To make a real impact on performance, you have to work at the system level. The author recommends 4 ways to improve productivity and efficiency by making changes at the organizational level. Create a system of tiered huddles that allow issues to be escalated to the next level of responsibility in a timely manner. Use systems that visually represent where work is so that collaborators have visibility into where a project stands. Make it clear how people should communicate depending on the complexity and urgency of the issue, and make sure that people responsible for getting tasks done also have the authority to make necessary decisions. End quote. And so the article itself posits something that I've been speaking about for years, which is that nothing happens in a vacuum. We live in an interdependent world, and we need to be able to take a step up to systems design for everything in life. I don't actually think the article goes far enough in terms of my views, which is that everything in your life is a system. You have many, many systems, and if you want to be able to increase your productivity, you need to bring higher awareness to the systems in your life. And the more awareness you have to the fact that there are systems in place, the actual greater efficacy of any change you want to make in your life. You actually don't need to know or care about habits in order to be able to understand there are systems in place and to take advantage of those systems. That's really where my mind went with this article, as opposed to thinking about this in an organizational structure. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
So I jump up and down with this article when it came to my attention for the same reason. It's not about inbox zero, getting things done, Eisenhower matrix. Yeah, all those are great. But if you don't have all those systems across the board and the people don't understand the systems and how the system works, well, it's what you hear. You hear in the getting things done world how people have making their system and they're so efficient at work, and when they come home it fall apart. And it fall apart because it's a system that doesn't work at home, not because the system doesn't work, but because in order to work, everybody need to play in the same way. And when others don't play, when others don't check lists, when others don't care about the list, the system fall apart. And it is really challenging to have, for the person who have those systems, to have systems that don't match on the efficiency, that don't match on the level of activity between one place and the other, between the two things.
I like the idea of the tiered structure. My only hesitation is that there has to be buy-in, that each tier is actually going to contribute to solving the problem, rather than adding just another layer of people that now demand updates around what the person at the bottom of the tier is going to do to resolve that issue. That's so often where this stuff falls apart, is you wind up picking up more and more layers of, well, what are you going to do about it? And the next group, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, none of that helps in the escalation structure. And most of the time it doesn't need to be escalated. The making work visible, I agree with you, Ray. I've been jumping up and down about this myself. My position is always, think out loud. That's what these tools are designed to do. We have the discussions in a communal environment. We are able to leverage the common mind around approaches and develop new perspectives. And that can only happen if people have visibility into the information. And so often we fall into those restricted information channels and we just suffer from it. So, I don't know that there's necessarily anything particularly new in this article. I think it's all pretty much the same hashed stuff that we've talked about before. It's just one of those things that I get into an issue with these kinds of articles, that people will read this and say, oh, okay, if I do that, things will get better. Oh, no, I put air in my tires, but it doesn't mean that I put gas in the car yet. It's always a piece of the larger perspective. So,
absolutely. It's a good article to read, by the way. I think it's well worth checking out. And the article author Daniel Markovits provides a really interesting perspective here that I think harkens back to Dr. Stephen Covey's work with The Eighth Habit and many other principled views on this. Dr. Ken Blanchard's work. I think there's a lot of that mixed in here, and I think that we need to remember how both individual and organizational productivity work in confluence as opposed to in opposition. And the more that can happen, I think the greater all organizations and also individuals create more capable environments to be efficient and effective. Augusto, what is our next story?
The next story comes from Business Tech, and it's how to negotiate a permanent work from home arrangement. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, a lot has changed, as the article said. The study shows that early 1/3 of the coworkers, that were working from their home, don't want to come back to the office. Okay, as we all know. I don't know if both sides are ready for this. Okay, either coming home or even some companies their employees not coming home. And there is employees who feel that they don't have that contact in the office, and they have not been able to how they showcase their work so they can get a promotion down the road and these kind of things. And you have other people who are not afraid of that and simply don't want to go back to work, but their companies are not even considering that. They are looking to the time where they can go back to having the people in the building and have those kind of interactions. You will be able to renegotiate the permanent work from home? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that.
It's a tough thing because often, up until this point, working from home was considered a perk, a luxury in many cases. You were lucky in many organizations. Oh, you got to work 1 day a week from home, and that's what you negotiated as part of your yearly review. So they were giving you that in lieu of something else. Well, now this whole situation has demonstrated that having to go into work for some people is completely unnecessary to maintain a high quality of work. But often you'll get into situations where, and I can see this happening with this type of a negotiation, you may be negotiating with a person who doesn't have the latitude to work from home all the time. So resentment creeps into this, or okay, you want this benefit, you're going to have to give up something else. We're not going to give you the pay raise because you don't have to make the commute in. And there's businesses doing that. Google's realigning pay scales based on moving out of Silicon Valley. So when we look at this type of a thing and this becoming a negotiated thing, personally, you can't negotiate in my book around where are you going to work. You have to get nailed down. What are you going to do and what's the value of what you're doing? Once that's nailed down, then the location becomes a different conversation. But there's baggage that comes along with this. Right now, everybody, or large chunks of people working from home make it easier because you don't have that segmentation of the people in the office together talking and the people outside the office, outside of the loop. Therefore, they get left out of things like, promotion discussions. That comes into play, and it's an active thing. So you have to look at it. It may be comfy to sit in your pajamas and work all day and have the latitude to be able to do that. But don't let that determine the value of the work that you're doing. The work has the value on its own, and it needs to stand on its own. And that should be what the negotiation is about.
I don't know. I'm going to say, I think a lot more people have discovered that you don't, as a person who has been working from home for a really long time, people has now discovered that you don't work in pajamas every day. Actually, I don't work in pajamas. I don't remember when is the last time I work in pajamas. But I agree with you that is that negotiation. It is going to be, and also it's going to be for the employee difficult, but it's also going to be for many corporations where they are going to need to look how they are going to do with the talent and which talent and how they're going to try to avoid that resentment.
Yeah, I think the perspective change is going to be, for the longest time, the businesses were looking at, well, how do we work with the people who want to work from home? Now it's going to be, how do we work with the people who have to come in? And it's a completely different approach, not only for the people doing it, but for leadership, to try and rebalance those expectations. And they're going to struggle. This is going to be a struggle that goes on for a long time.
Yeah, so this ties in really well with the CEO Insider article about 4 office trends that CEOs should have on their radars in 2021. And there were 4 interesting kind of observations that were made in the article. One is that the return will be gradual into 2022. The spotlight will be on workplace experience managers, in essence, helping a role within larger companies figure out the real estate needs of those particular organizations. Filling productivity gaps will be a technology imperative, it says. Just reading a little bit here, it says data that understands how people use the office and can predict behaviors will be the thread that ties resources to employee productivity together. And I think that's really quite key. And then finally, it says interconnected offices will emerge. In essence, smart office buildings will start to come about because you'll be able to connect different offices together in the sense that, meeting room solutions where you have different distributed workforces, and even Matt Mullenweg, the originator of WordPress.org, the software, he has this kind of distributed scale. I think we've talked about it here. The idea though now is he's even talking about it in terms of calling it distributed work as opposed to calling it remote work. And I really like that notion that we're not just talking about working remotely, we're talking about a distributed workforce. And that means distributed technologies are what we should be considering, and how we actually create an equitable environment for that all to take place.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love that term of distributed instead of remote. I think that's where we need to push the discussion into that, because it's not remote, it's really distributed.
Great. So we have time for one more of those. Our article. Oh, go ahead, Art. You're muted.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's interesting because, yeah, Augusto got out of it this time. I took that, talking while muted. Think about how manufacturing handles it, and distributed production. That's the model that's starting to carry over into this information space. And I think we could learn a lot from how manufacturing handles a distributed model and how we can take advantage of it.
Absolutely. So we have just a little bit of time to handle one more article this week in our stories, and we'll put the rest in the extra stories for purposes of the show notes, everybody. So Augusto, what is our final story this week before we go into new tools of the week? And now Augusto is muted. Two culprits in a row.
Caramba. I just didn't want Art to be the only one who was muted, so I do my effort. The last article come from Business Journal, the Nashville Business Journal specifically, and the article's title: "Employers must prioritize work-life balance for remote workers to remain competitive." And the reason is there. I think those 3 articles tied really well together with this discussion, and we are coming to a new set of challenges. A year ago, I remember talking to Art how the implementation of certain things that were radically impossible happened in a weekend. And then, over the rest of the month, how many corporations learn how to manage the remote people, the firewalls, all those things that were changed practically overnight. And now we are seeing the coming back and how all this is changing, and how people got, rediscovering cooking and rediscovering home life balance and rediscovering, as many challenging things has come from this. Also good things has come, and people has discovered other things that they really enjoy, and they now are looking into, okay, I don't want to lose this into my work-life balance equation.
Yeah, it's one of those key things that, and I go back to the beginning of our conversation talking about fun. It's not something that business can make happen. They have to provide the opportunity. They have to recognize the value of saying, look, take time for yourself, do what you need to do, plan the work accordingly, because in the end, that increases the value across the board. But you're right? That is a cultural shift. And that is something that has to happen not only from the grassroots level, but from the top down. And until it gets to the middle, where everything seems to get bogged down, it's going to be a continuous battle to get that recognition.
Awesome. Well, with that, we have reached the end of our stories this week. We have some more stories that we will put into the extra story section of this episode, so you can check that out in the show notes. And that takes us on to new tools of the week. And so every week, Augusto and I, we cull the interwebs for all of the various stories that we bring together for purposes of Anything But Idle. But we also come across a bunch of productivity tools and services that we think you might be interested in. And when we come across one or we use one that we think you might like, we bring that up. But of course, we give our panelists an opportunity to share tools that they may like. And so I'm going to try and bring them up on screen for you while we talk about them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up our first one this week and try to do this without causing too much trouble to my world. And let's see, where are we? Okay, here we are. Hold on one second, because I clearly was not prepared to do this, and so it's giving me a little trouble here. Let's see if I can do this without crashing my system here. I think it. All right, great. All right, so I'm going to talk about my tool this week, and it is a tool called Habitica. And so Habitica is an RPG style game, because we're talking about how to have serious fun, how to have serious play at work. This is one of my serious play tools. In essence, Habitica helps you manage habits as well as tasks within a role-playing game environment. I actually run a GTD party dedicated to getting things done users inside of Habitica. So if you're interested, you can join us. But in essence, what happens is you create a character in this game, and then you identify what are the various habits. They have 3 types of habits in the system, or 3 types of items in the system: habits, dailies, and to-dos, and they're tracked a little bit different in the way in which you use them. So habits are things that you're going to do every day, and dailies are also things that you're going to do every day, but in terms of habits, it's how many times you do them every day, versus dailies, which are just checking them off and doing them each day. So there's only kind of one component of doing them, but you can have sub items. So you can say, like, there are hygiene items, and then underneath the hygiene items you can have brush your teeth, wash your face, take a shower, those kinds of things underneath that subgrouping, underneath that larger grouping. And then of course to-dos, which are more like regular tasks that you might do one-off in the system. They all give you points, and they work toward various quests and other kinds of activities within the system. Now, you would think, well, why would I waste my time, doing something like this? You would be surprised at how motivating it is for you to be able to check off those items and to be able to engage in a productive activity with others who are also doing that productive activity. Now, I'm not seeing their work. I'm only seeing whether or not they're being rewarded or punished for doing that work. And I'm frequently involved in them either doing that work and being punished alongside them, which of course focuses me on kind of making sure that I make sure the team doesn't get harmed, and that also makes those other people more inclined to get their work done so that the team doesn't get harmed. And that kind of I don't know some of these people, at all. I know some of the people in terms of they're in my GTD meetups and other folks I know through the personal productivity community. But, this is just a group of people trying to get things done. We have a weekly review challenge that we do each week. So you perform your weekly review, you check it off, and now you know that the rest of the team is working toward that same goal. And it just keeps you motivated in that sense. So there's all kinds of things going on in the system. But I really like this because it's low overhead. There's not a lot to the application that you have to do if you don't want to, but if you really want to take advantage of it, you can, and you can do a whole lot with it. So you can stay in the free platform. You can also buy different functions that give you greater gems, basically, so that you have greater capacity within it. But I really like Habitica, and I like the RPG style games that allow you to be able to gamify your productivity, and this is one of those that are kind of best in class. Okay. With that, we have a few more new tools this week. And so, Augusto, what is your new tool this week? And I will work to get it up on screen as you talk about it. You are muted, sir. It's like the whole beginning of the show. Everybody was great, and then it devolved at the
Well,
end
that
of it.
happens. It happens. I was saying that the application, since we're talking about fun, it's a mind mapping application. It's MindNote. MindNote is my application of shows. I have it on the iPads. I have it on the Mac, and I really enjoy working. There is something for me about thinking and working and planning on that visual way. So, and as we said today on the news, now on the Mac, you can build other things. You can build the organizer and do the organizer approach. So it is an app that I really, really, really like and really enjoy. You can do context. You can do a bunch of things. It's an incredible application. So that's my app of the week.
Wonderful. And this is iOS and Mac.
Yes.
So it's focused on the Apple ecosystem, just so folks are aware. Wonderful. Thank you, Augusto. Art, you have 2 new tools this week. What's your first?
Yeah, I'm going to steal that bottom
week?
slot since it's just me as the guest. So I'm taking 2. One's a really small, simple one that I love, and it's called Rotation Control. It's an app on Android, and it has one job in life, and that's to lock the rotation of your device in whatever position.
I think we've lost Art for a moment there. Hopefully we'll get Art back. But it sounds like rotation control helps to control the rotation of your device.
Yeah.
So if you've got your device in portrait, you can click on rotation control. It will stay rotating. There we go. For some reason, things are acting. Can you still hear me? Because
you're back now. We lost you for about 5-10 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know. Something just went nuts. But anyway, the rotation control works on Android and on Chrome OS, which is the thing I like about it. So if I have my Chromebook and I'm using it to take hand notes, I can tell it to lock in a vertical portrait position. I can make it auto rotate. I can lock it in the landscape. I can lock it reversed, whatever I want. And then it just ignores the rotation sensor. It's really simple, really easy. But if you've ever used on a tablet, maybe the tablet's in portrait and then you go to put it down, all of a sudden it flips and then you got to wait till it flips back. That 2 or 3 seconds can get pretty annoying after a while. So I love that little thing and I've used it forever. So
fantastic. Next up.
Second one, and we're talking about fun little gadgets. And I actually have this one here. This is a keyboard. We talked about portable keyboards and extension keyboards. Well, I'm going to move my mic for a second here. This is a keyboard. It actually completely folds up. It has a pop-out stand. You can put any sort of mobile device on there, Bluetooth keyboard. But what I like about it is an all aluminum body frame chassis, and it slides right in any bag. So if you're thinking about mobile devices, what we have on the screen is not the exact same brand as the one I have, because for some reason I can't find the one I have anymore. But as a device for mobile keyboards, and I've had a ton of them, this is the one I keep going back to. It works well, it works consistent, holds your phone just fine, and it's a great thing to throw in the bag. And I think this one's like under $30, something like that.
It's definitely $32.99 USD here.
So, yep, those are 2 that I highly recommend.
Wonderful. And with that, those are our new tools this week. And so, Augusto, let's kick into our featured story of the week this week, and it's near and dear to my heart. I'm biased. I'm just putting that out there. I'm biased that this is the story of the week, and we debated over whether or not it was, but it turns out that it is. So what is our story this week?
Well, the story of the week is Evernote Home, and as a person who has 0 ties with Evernote, it's been...
You have an Evernote account.
I have an Evernote account, but I don't use it. Yes.
You still got a MySpace account. What are you talking about?
GeoCities. I don't know what you're talking about. So now I lost train of thought, but thank you. But as Evernote came in a lot of changes, and they begin to roll in the new Evernote in September 2020. Obviously they has been planned for bigger things and better things, and Evernote Home is one of those things. So now in the 2021, they have come to finally make your Evernote Home available for many people. So you are going to see notes, you're going to see now Scratchpad, things that you recently captured, the notebooks, and all organized in a better way. You will be able to use shortcuts. So even as a person who don't use Evernote, I think they are trying to make a lot more practical the Evernote as the one stop for everything you do. So if you are a user of Evernote, I think that's incredible news.
Yeah, so Home in Evernote, for those of you who are completely unaware of what it is and where it came from, is that Evernote last year was actually held a dashboard contest in which people submitted how they created these notes to be able to springboard off of into their Evernote systems or outside of Evernote to be able to kind of get their day started or to start work on some particular project. So they created these very wonderful notes that were in essence like a dashboard. It's a cockpit control dashboard in essence that helped them go to where they needed to go. Evernote saw what users were doing, and decided to create something that helped users start their day. They call it a one-stop dashboard for you to be able to pull together those pieces as you are starting your workday. That's where Evernote now starts. When you open it up, open the application, it starts in Home, and Home is a series of widgets. Currently you have 7 widgets. In Premium, Basic, you have access to the 3 main widgets, and this gives you the capability of opening up the application, having, say, a pinned note widget, and being able to then enter that widget and start work. Start getting access to the things you need when you first need them. And this is the first iteration, first kind of step into new features in the Evernote world. And I think we're looking forward to seeing many more over the near term. And it's the first step for Home as well. I think Home is now being the one-stop dashboard to start your day. I hope that at some point, I don't know anything inside knowledge-wise, but I hope that someday Evernote Home or Home in Evernote becomes a place where you can actually stay, kind of dwell a while and get things done in that space. So it's just great to have a visual layout for notes and things of that nature. One of my favorite tools way back in the day was the folks who created Mind42 also had this corkboard tool where you could connect your Evernote account to it, and you had this infinite corkboard, virtual corkboard, where you could pin notes anywhere you wanted to. And that visual capability is just so powerful, and Evernote is taking a little bit like dipping their toe in the water in that direction, and I'm just very excited. In full disclosure, I am an Evernote certified consultant, and I am one of the Evernote regional leaders for North America. So as you can imagine, I love Evernote, and so I'm biased in that sense. But it is just really exciting to see Evernote chewing bubblegum and walking at the same time here. They are working on stability and feature parity with Evernote Legacy, while at the same time pushing out new innovative features that really will help them, gain back some market share that they perhaps lost in the process of this rewrite of the entire ecosystem of products.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a few questions. I'm going to try and avoid the snark if at all possible, but it's going to happen. So one, do you think this helps them regain, or at least head in the right direction of regaining the momentum they had before they went off on a tangent and did things like selling socks? And second, Notion's one of its big things is the ability to create these dashboards. That's been the push. And if you do some searching right now, you'll see that of all things, TikTok creators are loving creating Notion dashboards, which that shouldn't last too long, but we'll see. But the question I have is, do you see this being a differentiating feature in Evernote, or is this more of an evolutionary feature?
I think this is evolutionary in the sense that the fact of the matter is that Evernote builds tools by virtue of paying attention to how users are using their data. And so it is about modifying the system in a very structured environment so that users are capable of getting more use out of their data. Again, Evernote's kind of unofficial motto is remember everything, accomplish anything. And so their first objective was to be able to make it really easy for people to save everything possible into Evernote. And I would imagine that the new Evernote's biggest chore this year, going into next probably, is making sure that can be done again in the new product, both on Evernote desktop and mobile. But right behind that is paying attention to how users are using their data and then making it easier to do that. Now, different than Notion or really any of the other no-code tools that people are using in order to flexibly create their own productivity systems, Evernote has a structured mechanism for being like a structured ecosystem. You have stacks, notebooks, notes, tags, and none of the others may mix. You can't have notes in stacks. You can't have tags in stacks. You can't have tags in notebooks. They're in that they're in that hierarchical structure for very good reason. And the idea behind having now Home is going to also fit that motif. That is a structured environment. It's not going to be something where you're just dragging and dropping widgets all over the place and that kind of thing. People need certainty when it comes to their productivity. That means they need guardrails, and I think Evernote's going to hold to that perspective. I think it makes most sense for them. Whereas Notion and other tools that allow for this flexible environment where people are, very interested in tweaking and changing things all the time, there are tools for that. And I think the market bears out that multiple tools like that can exist. So I think that's where it sends Evernote, where I sense Evernote is going with this. And yes, I think they're done producing socks. The merch is over. Although I have to admit, in the Evernote community, there is always there are several people, multiple times a year who say, "Hey, I want a T-shirt," or "I want this. Why did Evernote take this away?" So there is that. I always hear this from the Evernote team, which is that there's kind of the 5% problem, which is that many of the features in Evernote, 5% of the user base uses those features, but it's spread out all different features. And case in point, I'm a huge tags user. I'm a heavy tags user. Although I use stacks and notebooks as well, it's not like it's an all or nothing proposition for me. I believe in using both of them, and I'm in that under 5%. Most people don't. And so I'm on a mission to teach people how to use tags across their entire ecosystem, because the more people who use tags, the more people will use tags in Evernote, and therefore the more love hopefully Evernote will get in development of how tags really work. I want colored tags. I want tags that can tag every kind of element in Evernote. I really believe in tags as being able to really ontologically approach your productivity. And if you can't do that, then it's really not as flexible and adaptive as it really should be. And so I'm really happy to see Home. I think Home is a great new feature. I actually recorded a Getting More Done with Evernote podcast episode on that, so that's available, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and a little walkthrough, just a quick back of the napkin kind of recording that showed folks around Evernote Home. So I'll put a link to those in the show notes for anybody who is interested in seeing that.
So this actually fits into your scheme of world tag domination. Okay.
Well, again, I think that tools like Obsidian and others that really kind of force the hand of the user into Zettelkasten methodology and others that are heavy tag associated are brilliant. But most people are not going to lend to that modality of working. It's actually really difficult to think about your entire world in that system. And so the people that it works for, it really works for. And for the rest of us, it just doesn't quite. And so we need to recognize that fact that that's always going to be a minority of users. But there are really useful ways in which we can use tags, and we should use them for those purposes. I'm currently teaching a 5-week Evernote masterclass, and I'll put a link to that and also in the show notes. It's a free masterclass folks can join. And the idea behind that masterclass is to show people all the features that Evernote has in a basic sense. It is called Getting Started with Evernote, so we're not doing anything advanced in this first round. But showing people how to actually set up and use Evernote in a productive way means approaching Evernote, understanding all of its features, and tags are one of those features that I think most people don't actually think about utilizing because they don't understand how it can be useful to them. And as soon as they understand, oh, you know what, this can be useful to me, it's all of a sudden unlocks doors that otherwise couldn't be done. It's also the way in which I structure notes, for example, that say OneNote doesn't make sense to me. The fact that you can place anything in the OneNote ecosystem is really great for some people, but for me, I like structure. I like to be able to know where things are going to be and how they're going to work each time. And any deviation from that is a productive disqualifier for me. It's a productive reduction. And so I want to make sure that as I'm teaching people structure, it's also being dependent upon that the system itself provides that level of structure as well. So there's nothing wrong with OneNote. I think OneNote is great for the people who use it. I know you're a OneNote user, Art. And so it's not that OneNote is bad. It's just that Evernote itself provides a structure that appeals to me. And I think for the users of Evernote, it appeals to them by virtue of the fact that they find themselves using Evernote. So that's kind of my piece on it.
Just the thing about the tagging is interesting. I try to tell people when they struggle with understanding tagging, I say, look, if you go into your tool and you type the same thing into the search box 3 times, you've defined a tag. And if you think about it that way, search is just undefined tags, and now you're just providing a structure to it. I agree completely. To me, it's one of the biggest weaknesses of OneNote. So to see Evernote embracing that and using that as part of Home and how it fits into their entire ecosystem, it makes perfect sense. I mean, not very many tools do tagging particularly well.
Yeah, I always think if you have a table of contents is one level of tagging, right? We're grouping things together, and those page numbers are a grouping of those items. But if you flip to the back of the book and you see that index is in essence a set of tags. It's just showing you how to group together different content and find it faster. And so we can do that, but we can also use tags for purposes of categorizing phases in a project or a set of criteria for being able to group together items that are across different notebooks so that we're capable of really understanding the context of what we're looking at when we're looking at it. And so I just really, I think tags are an underrepresented and really powerful tool when we make the opportunity, where we take the opportunity to be able to understand how they can work in our systems across the board. And I'm not talking specifically about Evernote. I think across the board in our worlds, we can use this kind of creating a taxonomy. We could do it in Google Calendar. You can do it in email. You could do it in all kinds of ways that can be really, really powerful.
Sounds like a productivity cast episode that needs to be recorded.
I will have Augusto capture that.
I will capture that, but I agree. I think you said something really important, Art, on every search you have done more than 3 times should be a tag, should be a category, should be, I completely agree with you.
All right, we have reached the end of our conversation. I have an announcement, and then we are going to say goodbye. And so the quick announcement is that SaneBox and a bunch of partners are doing something called Productivity Gold for 2021, and I believe the deal is still ongoing. So those of you who are interested, just check out the show notes and click on the SaneBox and Partners Productivity Gold, and there are a bunch of deals embedded in that Productivity Gold. You can get SaneBox at a discounted rate. You can get all kinds of different productivity products at a discounted rate, including Amazing Marvin and several others that are, I believe Amazing Marvin's in there. Don't at me if it's not. But there are several different products that are in that discount program, and so check it out. I mean, if you're going to use one of those productivity applications, why not get it at a discounted rate? So I just wanted to bring folks to bring that to your attention if you were thinking about upgrading to any particular tools in the coming weeks or months. And so with that brings us to the end, and that means, Art, how can folks keep up to date with you and your work?
Best way, either look for me over at the Idea Pump or follow me on Twitter at Art Gelwix. Either way, you'll hear all the nonsense that I have to spew. So.
Well, thank you so much, Art, for joining us here on Anything But Idle today.
Thank you, Art.
Good to see you as always. Augusto, It's just us.
It's just us. It's just, and then there is only two, and Agatha Christie will come again to be mentioned in the show.
Well, thank you as always for joining me on Anything But Idle and really making Anything But Idle happen in the background.
It's my pleasure.
And so with that, if we missed something, if for some reason we missed a story that was really big or important, feel free to let us know. You can go to anythingbutidle.com and you can let us know on the contact page there. You can also tweet or DM us on Twitter at Anything But Idle. We've got our DMs open, so you can message us and we can read and respond there. If you have a question or comment about anything we've discussed on Anything But Idle, you can go ahead to the episode page there at the bottom. There's a comment section. Leave a comment or question, and we will be happy to respond to you if needed. While you're on Anything But Idle, you will also find on the episode pages our show notes, which include a machine-generated transcript, so you can just follow along and capture items as you need to. We have our tools of the week, any extra stories that we couldn't cover, and of course that text transcript, which is downloadable in PDF, but it's also explodable. There's a read more button. Just click on that read more button, and you'll be able to actually open up the transcript and read it along while the thing is playing. If this is your first time watching the live stream, feel free to hit that thumbs up icon and subscribe. If you are watching the live stream and this is your 50th time watching us, feel free to click the thumbs up icon, and we appreciate your support there. And if you are listening to this after the fact in your podcast app of choice, great. Feel free to leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or otherwise. That really helps us to expand our productivity listening community, and so thank you for doing that. If you all didn't know, we actually run a digital community for Anything But Idle that lives inside of Personal Productivity Club, and you can find that by going to www.personalproductivity.club. And so you can go ahead then and go to channels. You'll find the Anything But Idle channel, and we post the events there, so you can RSVP to them and join us live and comment and all that other fun stuff. And so with that, see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.